All right, it is time for some what I've been watching film wrap up goodness. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be a video about some of the action films that I have seen recently. I have a whole backlog of films that I have seen but not talked about, so this time I decided to group them into sort of different genres. So this one's going to be action. I might end up with two videos because I watch a lot of action movies. I'm also going to have like an art house one, a horror one, and a book to film adaptation drama one. Those are the plans, and I think this is going to go up first. And so let's talk about some action movies. It is a genre that I enjoy and that I've enjoyed, I think, always. and and I actually haven't seen as many, which is something that is kind of sad, but then there's also a fair amount to enjoy and catch up on. And one that I watched recently was Morgan. This is from 2016. It is directed by Luke Scott, who is the son of Ridley Scott. It was rated R. It's a bit of more of a sci-fi action thriller, but there is action. And the reason I saw it was that it is one of the film goals I have is to watch the movies that either won or were nominated for Best Overall Stunt Performed by a Stuntwoman, and this was on that list. I can't remember if it was nominated or if it won, and I didn't pick it. I have a sort of game that I play with myself to try and figure out what was the stunt. I'm also following Best Fight, although for Best Fight I've seen I've seen the majority, which is why I added also anything nominated. So anyway, so this was nominated or won for Best Overall Stunt Performed by a Stuntwoman. And that's the reason I saw it. So as I mentioned, it is more of a science fiction thriller kind of situation. It follows a woman who is sort of like an assessor, someone who does assessments, who goes up to this remote forest-ish area. It's an interesting combination because you have a remote forest setting, but it's very high tech because there is a bunch of people that are overseeing a project, and there is an incident that happens. So she goes up to assess the situation and decide whether, report back on what's going on. The thing is, the project is Morgan, which is I don't know, it's been so long since I've seen it, I don't remember what term that they use. We'll say artificial intelligence, artificial life form situation, created, so is created artificial? Ooh, that's an interesting question. But how there are different ways to create. So many questions. Anyway, so this is someone who goes up to assess after something has gone wrong. The thing that I found really interesting about this one is that there's so much interesting tension and conversations in it, because everyone at this facility is so heavily invested in the project, and they're isolated, so they don't have a lot of outside contact, so they're heavily invested. So when someone comes in to assess, they have their guards up pretty high. But I really quite enjoyed this one. There are so many things about this that it has some interesting questions in terms of moral dilemmas and ideas and boundaries and understandings and definitions and those kinds of things. But in its heart, it is really this sort of thriller, because the tension is always there. And it does have a fair amount of action, but it's not an action movie per se, in terms of that's not the biggest, I don't know, is it the biggest draw? I don't know. If you've seen it, what would you say? Action movie? Thriller? I think it's somewhere in between. And of course, because it has this artificial life form creation idea, it is science fiction. At least as far as I know, it's still science fiction. So and it also hit one of my other goals, which is watching films with Michelle Yeoh in it. She is in it, but she's not in it a lot. The sort of Kate Mara and Anna Taylor-Joy are sort of the main people in this cast, but it also has Toby Jones, Rose Leslie, Michelle Yeoh, as mentioned, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Paul Giamatti, and Brian Cox, which I forgot until I went and looked it up. I forgot that Brian Cox was in it. So really quite an impressive cast, and I thought it was a solid, engaging story, good tension, interesting characters, lots of great conversations, and like this is also one that isn't necessarily reinventing the wheel, but it definitely was an engaging ride, and I enjoyed it from start to finish. And so that was really nice. It was also really nice to see a movie that was 90 minutes or 92 minutes. I gotta say, there are so many movies out right now that are really long, and I appreciated that it was not that long, and it was enjoyable and the right length for the type of film or for the story that it was telling, for the action that it had. And I also think when you're holding that much tension, it's a little hard to do that past the 90-minute stage without some kind of breaks and relief. Like this one, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that I watched it. Next up, we have Gunpowder Milkshake. This one, it says here in select theaters and on Netflix. So I think it was a Netflix original. That's what it feels like. And so this one is from 2021, so from last year. It's rated R. It's just under 2 hours. It's in a US, France, Germany co-production. It stars Karen Gillan. Gillan? Is that how you pronounce her name? Gillian. Let's look at the poster. No, this has an I, which would put it Gillian. I think it's Karen Gillan, who I always forget that what I know her from primarily is Guardians of the Galaxy. Anyway, but so she plays a professional, so a hit person, which is the family tradition, and like so many films about people who are in that role of a professional, including The Professional with Leon, which is one of my favorite films of all time, like definitely top 10. I say everything's in the top 10. One day I have to do my top movies, because I know the top 5, but that 6 to 10 has like 30 movies. Anyway, but I think it actually might be 3. No. Anyway, that's a conversation for another day. So this one, she is a professional. She goes on a job. Something goes a bit wrong. She gets into a bit of a sticky situation. Lots of chaos and action ensue. I really enjoyed this. It was really nice to see almost all female. Well, it was a lot of women in the cast for an action movie. So she's in the lead, but we also have Lita Headley, Michelle Yeoh, again, Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett is someone that I'm watching the films that they're in this year. Carla Gugino, Paul Giamatti, who seems like he's in like a lot of the films that I've been watching. And then we also have Chloe Coleman. So and I really enjoyed this. I thought the action was good. This one was quite violent, though, I will say. It is rated R, and there's a lot of action sequences. Where Morgan was more of a thriller, this one is an action movie. There's lots of fighting, there's lots of explosions and danger like throughout the entire thing, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked Karen Gillan's character. I like that the people that she encounters, the people she talks to, she has, again, it's not, in some ways it's not reinventing the wheel, but I can't think of an action movie with a female lead where we've seen sort of this story, so it was nice to see that. And I really liked the supporting cast, and some of the settings that they had with the supporting cast, and sort of just, it was kind of playful and funny as well. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, I think, a little tongue-in-cheek, and also just very, very colorful too. This is one of the other, I really like this poster as well, but it's got very bright colors, orange and blue definitely throughout, but the action is very intense, and some of the scenes were like, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this, like, so it's not, it earns that R rating if you want to place it that way, but I really enjoyed it, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of chaos, and so that's that one. Next up we have Headshot. So this is one that I watched on Netflix. I don't think it's a Netflix original. I don't think so, but it is on Netflix here in Canada. It's from 2016, and it's an Indonesian action movie following, or starring Iko I am trying to figure out how to pronounce his last name correctly. Either Uwais, Iko Uwais, or Iko Uwais. I've heard it in two different ways. I was looking actually up some videos, and he is interviewed by Scott Adkins. Scott Adkins has a YouTube channel. He's a martial artist and an actor. I will leave a link to the interview up above if you would like to check it out. And Scott Adkins says Iko Uwais. But then I saw another video where he talks about his favorite action scenes, or some of his favorite action scenes, and I think he says his name Iko Uwais. So I'm not sure. Still working on that. Anyway, he's an Indonesian martial artist that I've been watching films from ever since I saw The Raid at TIFF at its premiere many years ago. I watch any movie that he is in, and I am close. I'm actually very close to being complete. I think I have 3 more plus 1 film coming out this year. So Headshot is an Indonesian action thriller. It's very intense to have the rating TVMA. So it is intense. So this one uses the amnesia trope. So the protagonist wakes up and doesn't have any memory of who they are. They have a headshot, so they've been shot in the head, and they don't know who they are. But as time goes on, it's revealed that they are extremely physically capable in any kind of dangerous situation. So has intensive defensive skills. So there's the question: will he find a new life? Will his old life come to haunt him? I don't know. Where did these go? And we do also have the other story of this, which is there is a crime lord who has a very cutthroat group of people who may, be missing someone. Who could that someone be? So the directors of this, one of the directors went on to direct The Night Comes For Us from 2018, which Iko Uwais is also in, which I think that was a Netflix original. And that's the director Timo Tjahjanto. It was also co-directed by Kimo Stamboel. All the information will be down below so I actually quite enjoyed this one. It is very intense. The action sequences are very, very, very intense, bloody, violent, gory, and there are a fair amount of, in addition to hand-to-hand combat scenes, there are a fair amount of sort of gunfight scenes and combination gunfight, hand-to-hand combat, found object, knife fights. Like, this really has a lot of close quarters fighting, so if that is something that you like, it's definitely one to check out. And I did really enjoy, especially the hand-to-hand combat. For me, that's where I fall. I'm not so much a fan of gunfights. And this one also, but it really was tough. Not only some of how far some of the fighting went, like some of the fight sequences, especially when it's one person versus one person out in the sort of open or close quarters, those are the ones that I love. With maybe knife fights, maybe not gunfights. I like hand-to-hand combat in terms of the types of fighting I like to see, and so there was a fair amount of this in that. I also thought they actually had a pretty good emotional through line in terms of the question, are you going to try and start life anew? What happens when your past catches up with you? And also, but I feel like it wasn't just, there was some gray there, because one of the challenges with this one is that the crime lord is so sinister in terms of how he recruits people. And I found that even just the idea, I'm not going to go into it, but just even the idea of how he recruits people is really disturbing. But it also, they really did show that crime family or crime group were very dedicated to each other. And there was this sort of sense of sometimes remembrance, and and his character, the protagonist, being like, I don't want to hurt you, I don't want to fight you, and the other person sometimes, or they did, or sometimes they didn't. And so there was some good emotional scenes, especially with one of his friends. I'm trying to remember his name. Was it Benny? That was quite good. Oh, I thought I had it in my notes, but there's so many notes. Bessie, his friend Bessie. I thought that there was quite a good scene in that. So it wasn't just, there was some emotion to it as well, which actually made it even harder sometimes to watch some of the fighting, because anyway, but overall, I really did enjoy this. I'm glad I ended up watching it. It is very intense. I do find that I'm watching less and less super violent films. So this one falls somewhere in between, because although it is very violent, I really thought a lot of the close quarter fight scenes, the found objects sort of like in a, you're in a regular space, and you sort of work with what you got. Scenes were great, and some of the more open air fight scenes one-on-one were great as well. But the story could be quite disturbing, so it was a bit of a challenging one. But I am glad that I watched it, and it is on Netflix here in Canada. I also watched, because Iko Uwais is in it, The Man of Tai Chi. This is from 2013. It is directed by Keanu Reeves, who also stars in it. But the protagonist is a man who is learning Tai Chi, or has been studying Tai Chi, and sort of ends up being recruited, brought into a sort of underground fighting scene, and sort of that's sort of the plot of the film. And with this one, I watched it, as I said, because Iko Uwais is in it, but he is not the protagonist. This is an earlier film, so this is almost 10 years old. So I was just sort of waiting, because, like if you watch a lot of action movies, sometimes like the person that you're looking for is going to be someone that the protagonist fights. So I kept on waiting to see, is this fight going to be it? Is this fight going to be it? Is this fight going to be it? So, and finally, it was like, okay, it's going to be this one. So he's in it. He's not in it very much, but it's a great fight. So it was well worth watching for that. But overall, for the movie, I would say I wasn't a huge fan. I found it a little hard to root for the protagonist. Not root for, that wasn't it. I just felt like I wasn't emotionally invested or connected with the protagonist. And I think one of the challenges is that this follows the idea or the theme of trying to push someone to be violent. Because we all are, or that's human nature, we all have a limit. And I do not like that story. I just do not like that story. It's not one I believe, and it's one that I feel like is so rooted in cruelty, to try and do that to someone, to push them to the point that they're going to either become what someone else thinks we all are, or, to the point where they are going outside what they believe to be the limits because they're being forced to do so. So that's just not a theme that I like. I will say some of the setup and ideas and around it some we've seen before, and some were interesting and different. And so that was a good dynamic. It was also kind of interesting to see Keanu Reeves play, pretty much he's more of a bad guy in this, and we don't get to see that very often. I think that's especially interesting given that he directed the film. So I wonder if that's something like he doesn't get a lot of roles being the bad guy. I can only think of one, and I did talk about it, and it's a bit is he? I don't know. It's actually got the similar theme of pushing someone, which is Knock Knock, which I watched for one of my film vlogs, I think not last year, but the year before. So anyway, Keanu is someone that I also will always watch what he's in, and I've thought maybe of picking him to be someone that I watch all of the films that I haven't seen or that I have seen, just because I've been watching his films for so long. I feel like there wouldn't be as many blind spots as some of the other people that I picked. So, but overall for this one, I wasn't as invested in the protagonist, which made it hard to be more invested in the film. I did think it had some good fight scenes in it, and it was really had some pretty interesting and different settings from each other. So that made it engaging, but I just didn't connect to it. Oh, but it did have Simon Yam. I forgot about that Simon Yam was in it. Oh, I love Simon Yam so much. I would definitely watch anything that he's in. So, but I did watch this for Iko Uwais, and he was good in it, but he wasn't in it that much. But this is definitely one of the earlier ones. I can't remember. It is after the raid. but before the Raid 2. I think that's where it lands. So I think I'm actually going to leave this here because I talked a lot. I have at least, I think I have 4 more action movies, so there will be more action movies to talk about. If you're interested, also the 2 films out of these 4 that passed the Bechdel test were Morgan and Gunpowder Milkshake, which is a film that features 2 women who talk to each other about something other than a man. So they passed the test. I am tracking that a little bit this year, and I'm sad to say how few films actually have that. So they both passed it, and both of them with pretty flying colors, to be honest, had lots of women having conversations with each other about something other than men, which is nice. And honestly, an action film, that's something we don't see as much, so I was particularly happy to have at least 2 in this round that did include that. So I will be back with more action movies. Let me know some of your favorite action movies. Let me know, do you have a favorite of style? Do you like hand-to-hand combat? Do you like car chases is another thing, explosions, gunfights, like sort of big effect type things or more close quarter type things, and yeah, or maybe just the last action movie that you saw. So there we go. I will be back with more action films pretty soon. Okay, thank you so much for watching.